Welcome to Solar Oregon's How to Go Solar and Storage Workshop. My name is Nicole, and I'm a program manager at the nonprofit Solar Oregon. This is a reoccurring workshop that we've been delivering to home and business owners across the state for over 16 years. We work to provide you as a consumer with information you need to make good and informed choices as you explore solar and or solar plus battery storage. So thank you all for joining us today. Today we'll cover many aspects of solar and battery storage. We'll start by looking at how solar works. We'll see the components in a system, learn about the process called net metering, which allows you to get credit for the energy that you export to the electrical grid, and see how solar can save you money on your utility bills. Next, we'll take a look at how solar contractors assess your home. We'll see common issues with potential sites that can increase the cost of solar installation or that can impact your ability to go solar. We'll look at energy storage and how energy storage can make solar more effective. And we'll look at current incentives and talk about installation. Solar Oregon is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we've worked to encourage solar and storage adoption throughout the state for over 46 years. We do this by providing reliable and impartial consumer education, working to build a clean energy community, and performing outreach and some policy advocacy. We also host solarized campaigns, solar tours, zero energy showcases, and expert led panel discussions on a range of topics from solar to storage. We are a member-based nonprofit, so thank you to all our existing members. Your support helps us provide these educational workshops. And I'm going to put some links in the chat that will be helpful resources that we'll be referencing throughout the presentation today. We'll also have a Q&A session after the presentation, so any questions that come up while I am going over solar and storage, feel free to put in the Q&A box, and we will go over those questions. And then the chat will just be used to repost those helpful links throughout the presentation. I'm also going to run a couple polls that just will help tell us where you're joining from today and helps us keep improving these educational workshops that are offered through Solar Oregon. So the first one is where you're joining from today, so I'll launch that first. Great, thank you for participating in the first poll. The next one is a demographics poll, so we can see who our education is reaching. And the next poll that we'll launch is just your familiarity with Energy Trust of Oregon incentives. Great, thank you all for taking the time to give us some more info about you. With that, we'll go ahead and just share that our next workshop is on March 5th. And we'll dive a little deeper from this basic information we're sharing here and look at how to compare solar quotes and some of the things that you'll want to know as you're looking through these quotes. So feel free to join us March 5th for that presentation. And all of our virtual workshops and showcases are recorded, so we will post these to our YouTube channel as well as this one today, you'll get an email of the recording of today's workshop since you registered. This workshop series is also supported by Energy Trust of Oregon. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit that was established in 2002 that provides resources to help enable customers of the investor-owned utilities in our state to use energy efficiently and gain access to renewable energy. They offer key incentives for solar installation and battery storage. So thank you, Energy Trust. For more information, you can head to energytrust.org. And then there's also a QR code there that goes straight to their solar resource page. So if you want to learn more about the resources we're going to talk today about for Energy Trust of Oregon, feel free to scan that QR code. And like I said, I'll repost those links in the chat that have links to resources as well. And just a reminder, any questions you have, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box. If you do put them in the chat, we might miss them. So just feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A. All right, now we'll jump right into how solar works. So this diagram here shows the system components of a typical solar system. This is an example of a grid-tied system. You can see the house in the middle of the diagram, and then the photovoltaic panels or PV panels are the solar panels up in the corner there. And so the sun hits the panels and they create the panels create a special voltage of electricity called direct current or DC. And that electricity will then flow into an inverter or microinverter. And from there, it'll flow into your home electrical panel or breaker box. Once that is in your home, then that energy will flow out to your outlets and appliances in your home. In a grid-tied system, you will have a special utility meter that gets installed called a bidirectional meter, and that'll actually measure the amount of energy that you produce and then send out to the grid, as well as if you need to pull from the grid, if your solar production is lower, it'll measure what you pull from the grid as well. We'll take a closer look at that component that converts the DC to AC. And so there's a couple different types of inverters. Pretty common are string inverters, and so those are attached to all of your panels. And so it looks like that white box shown in the image here. And that works in Oregon, as well as microinverters. And those are shown as these little black boxes. So you'd have more of these attached to a smaller number of panels. So they're usually attached to 1 to 3 panels. They both do work. Some contractors specialize in certain systems. They might have different warranty or manufacturer agreements with different types of inverters. So if you're curious about what type is in your system, you can ask your contractor. They both do work in Oregon. It just depends on what you're looking to do with your system. Solar panels can be mounted to your roof or ground mounted. Roof-mounted systems account for the vast majority of solar installed on homes and businesses, especially in dense urban areas where that ground space is not available for a ground mount. Ground-mounted systems can be a good option for families who have more space or are in rural parts of the state. But something to note is if you are doing a ground-mounted system, you will still have to run conduit from that system back to your home, so that can increase the cost. There is another type of technology that is out now called solar roof tiles. And so this is different from a solar panel because this is both a panel and a roofing material. So it's installed more like roofing material, but contractors will have to go through special training to install solar roof tiles. So if this is something you're interested in, you would want to make sure that your installer has experience installing these and maybe even get a testimonial from a customer where they have completed a project like this. There are different brands of solar roof tiles available. It can be more expensive because it's a newer technology. Um, and so, yeah, if you are interested in this technology, it's something you can ask your contractor about and see if they offer that. When getting quotes, which we'll talk about later, it's good to get at least 3 quotes from a solar installer, different solar installers as well, so you can see what options they have available, different equipment, and then make sure that they're designing a system that works best for your needs. As mentioned earlier, when your solar system is producing excess electricity, it gets exported to the grid where it can be utilized by other utility customers, and that's for that grid tied system. Net metering is the process that allows you to account for that energy that you export so you can gain credit for it. And this is why it's important to have a home solar system that matches your electricity consumption and needs. We'll illustrate how this works by looking at these 2 graphs. The first example is of a typical summer month. And so you can see in the graph, the orange bar shows how much solar you might be producing in a sunny summer month. And then the blue bar shows your electricity consumption. And so in the summer, when you're accessing more solar resource, you might actually be producing more electricity than you're using. And so um, by producing more, that would get measured by your bidirectional meter, and you would have net metering credit earned that would show up on your year-to-date credit bank. And the net metering year, this is important, starts in April. So on April 1st, so you start to build up credits as it's getting more sunny here in our state. And as you go through the year, you're building up those credits so that you can draw from them in a winter month where your solar production would be lower. So you can see that demonstrated in the second graph, where you might be producing less but have a similar consumption. You would need to pull from the grid. And if you're grid tied, you have the ability to do that. And so if you built up enough credits, you can access those credits so you won't be billed for the billable kilowatt hours that you use. And then, so remember we said that net metering year starts April 1st. It will run through March 31st. And then any credits that you haven't used at the end of the year will be donated to low income customers. So it's good to remember to match your system size to your needs so you're not overproducing enough. You want to produce enough electricity and credits that you can access them and aren't having to pay large energy bills, but not so much that you're sending it all back to the grid. Some people will choose to also add a battery to help store some of that energy that they're producing with their solar. And we'll talk about that more in detail later in the presentation. So here's an example of what your bill might look like if you are a PGE customer who has solar. You can see that your bill will have a meter read for the service period. So you'll see your net consumption meter reading and your excess generation meter reading, and then it'll look at the difference between those. And so in this example, the homeowner actually produced more than they consumed. So they have um, 327 kilowatt hours that will be added to their year-to-date bank, which you can see highlighted in this example. So because they produced more energy than they used, that was sent back out onto the grid and increased their year-to-date bank. Something you might notice is that the bill total is not zero. And that's because this is a grid tied system. So if you are grid tied, you would have to interconnect with the utility. And to be interconnected, there are certain fees that all customers pay to be part of the grid. And there are some good resources online if you want to learn more about understanding your bill. um, and diving deeper into that. But as you can see here, the fees for being in a grid tied system are about $12, and that can range depending on your location or the location of the customer. And so it could be from 11 to $18 a month for your fees if you're producing enough electricity with your solar system to not be billed for pulling energy from the grid, which is a pretty small bill comparatively to what we're seeing if you don't have solar. So it definitely helps to reduce your bill, but just good to remember that if you are grid tied, you still pay for those interconnection fees. All right, so solar is highly modular and customizable, and residential solar systems vary widely in size. Systems are measured in kW or kilowatts, and the average residential solar size for a system in Oregon is about 8 kilowatts. And that's going to depend on your needs. So, if you consume more electricity, you might need a larger system to um, be able to cover your consumption. If you use less, you might need a smaller system. So that can just range very for any homeowner, depending on where their home is located, how much solar resource they have. So it really depends. And the way to get that assessed is to have a solar contractor use satellite software to see what your solar resource is. They would review your energy bills as well. They could also come out on site to see what your solar resource is. And so even though the average size is about 8 kilowatts, it can vary for different homeowners and business owners. Other factors that can impact the size of your system are going to be the space you have available, what your budget is, what aesthetics needs you have. So, if you're part of, for example, an HOA, HOAs might have certain restrictions on how your solar is installed, like what part of the roof it's installed on, or if it's street facing. But it's good to know that HOAs cannot restrict you from going solar, but they can impact how it looks aesthetically. Um, and if you have more questions about that, please feel free to reach out or put them in the chat. So now we'll look at some of the factors that can impact your ability to go solar. First, regardless of your location in the state, the orientation of your roof has a big impact on your solar axis. This diagram shows a home and its orientation with respect to the cardinal directions, and the arcs over the home show the path of the sun in the summer and in the winter. So you can see here that the sun is always in the southern sky, and that means south-facing roofs are ideal for solar. However, both west and east-facing roofs can work well. In cloudier parts of the state, roofs facing due east could be slightly less effective due to early morning clouds that persist through the morning, which can block some of that sunlight out. And then the north facing roof is usually not installed on because that gets the least amount of sun and can have a lot of shading. So, um, this is also something that your contractor will look at to see where it would be best to put panels on your home, and also brings up trees and shading. So even if you have a perfect south facing roof, if you have a lot of trees and shading, that'll impact your solar resource. But these trees do provide other benefits such as shading, and other environmental benefits. So don't despair if you have a lot of trees. There's other ways you can get involved with solar, and one of them is community solar. The state has a community solar program, and there's an income qualified program as well as a standard program. And I'm just going to re-put the resource links in the chat. There's some links in there for community solar, so you can learn more about that. And it's basically signing up for um, a subscription to be part of uh, a solar project that is off-site, so it wouldn't be on your home. And then you could see bill savings and then still be part of renewable energy, even if you have trees that shade everything out by participating in community solar. So even if you do have some big, beautiful trees, check out community solar because that could be an option for you. Um, and then if you have additional buildings on your property, maybe one of those is less shaded, so you can check those out, or consider ground mounting if you have access to more space and have some space that is not shaded out. The roof complexity can impact your ability to go solar. So here we show an example of a complex roof and a simple roof. Uh, it is a lot easier to install solar on a simple roof that doesn't have a steep pitch. And it doesn't mean that you can't install on a complex roof. It just can increase your cost. And if those roof planes don't line up with solar resource that is meaningful, it could impact your ability to go solar. But um, that's something that a contractor could help assess with your particular site. Um, the contractors also look at roof setbacks because that's something they have to take into consideration with how the panels are laid out on your roof. And they'll do that when they design your system. If you're getting quotes from solar contractors, they'll usually be a blueprint of what your system will look like, and it'll include what type of equipment and how much they estimate your yearly production to be. So um, if you're looking for those type of specifics, we'll share how to connect with a contractor at the end. Possibly the biggest factor that can affect whether you're able to go solar is your roof condition. Your roof will need to be replaced when it reaches the end of its lifetime. And so if you have panels on your roof that are still in working order, you would have to uninstall those, put up your new roof, and then reinstall your solar. And this can be costly from $10,000 and up. So for this reason, it's recommended to have at least 10 years of roof life. Panels do last for 20 to 25 years, and as they're getting more efficient, some of them are lasting even longer. So uh, that's just something to take in consideration. If you're installing a new roof, that is a really good time to look at solar because that roof life and panel life will be matching up. Um, and if you expect to need to re-roof in the next few years, maybe doing your research to collect information about what your solar system might look like or what your needs are for solar, and then waiting till you install that new roof so that you have enough roof life to keep those panels on. Finally, what's underneath your roof can also impact how easy it is to go solar. In order to get the building permits for your installation, your contractor will get inside your attic to check the structure of your roof. Note that some jurisdictions have pickier um, codes and permits. And so um, your contractor will be assessing if your roof meets that code before they install solar. Newer homes tend to have trusses, which are pictured here, and those extra vertical supports usually help meet those requirements. But a lot of homes in the state are older homes, so they might not have these additional supports, and that can be okay. You still might have a roof that meets the code, but the contractor will be able to get in there and assess that. If your roof does need any additional supports or engineering, that could increase the cost to bring that roof up to code. And then um, if you have a manufactured home, sometimes those don't meet code for installing solar on the manufactured home. So if your manufactured home is on land that you own, you could do ground mounted solar. And then also you could consider maybe installing solar on another building you have on your property that meets the code, or consider community solar. And then another thing to consider is your electrical panels. So if you are in an older home, you might need to upgrade your electrical panel before you go solar. Um, and then if you're looking to make that upgrade, considering what your consumption is going to help make that decision, as well as planning for changes. If you're going to be adding additional electric appliances or EV chargers, just making sure that you're incorporating that into the work you do so that you can meet those goals. Now we'll jump right into battery storage. It's important to know that your solar system by itself does not allow you to use your solar electricity during an outage. So, to do this, you need to add a battery. This ability to use power when the grid is down is called energy resilience. Solar and battery storage are complementary technologies, and so solar makes batteries more effective by recharging it, and your battery will allow you to access the solar independently from the grid, which is helpful to store the energy, but also keep the lights on during an outage. This is what solar plus storage might look like. You might have the battery installed in your garage and typical roof mounted solar. Power outages can vary in their causes and frequency and duration. So it's important to consider what type of outages you receive often and what you would want your system to be able to endure. So short, frequent outages could be from storms and squirrels. In our state, we do have fire risk. So we have something called public safety power shutoffs, where the utility will decide if they need to power down depending on the fire risk here in the Pacific Northwest. And then there's also a risk of earthquake. So if you're thinking of those different outages in which you experience, for example, if you're in Portland, sometimes you might just have outages during storms, such as a snowstorm, things like that. Um, and so if you're looking to be able to withstand that, it's a good conversation to share with your contractor. There are more incentives for batteries currently, and we'll talk about those as well. When it comes to picking a battery, there are many good products on the market. However, due to manufacturer certification requirements, many contractors might specialize in a specific type of battery or brand. It's really important to know that you can mix different modules of batteries, but they all need to be the same brand. Um, and so if you do start with one brand of battery, you would stick with that brand if you're looking to add additional batteries. Most batteries have capacity between 10 and 14 kilowatt hours. Some are smaller, some are larger. If people are looking to back up and withstand a longer outage, they might do two batteries. An average size storage in Oregon is around 13.5 kilowatt hours. But again, it just is going to depend on what you have for your goals for your solar system and how much backup power you're looking to plan for. There are different types of batteries on the market, but two common chemistries are nickel, magnesium, cobalt, which is a lower price, and then lithium iron phosphate, which has become more common, and it does have a longer lifetime. For homes that don't need a lot of that don't need like instantaneous power for something like a motor. Um, Usually we do solar plus storage, but if you're wanting to have something that needs that instantaneous power, you can still do storage, but you want to tell your contractor about it so they can factor it into the design of your system and make sure that they are designing it to be able to provide that. It's important to set your expectations properly about what a battery can do and what it cannot do. Even if you don't use much electricity, a single battery will usually not back up your entire home for a meaningful period of time. However, you can do what is called a partial backup. So instead of trying to keep everything powered in your entire home, you can choose to power specific parts of your home during an outage, and then the rest of your home will lose power. And then this process, if you are trying to back up your entire home, would need multiple batteries and can be very expensive. So when people are considering pairing solar plus storage, they'll often look at, two main questions, and that is what needs power and for how long. Items most frequently chosen to be backed up include a refrigerator to keep the food from spoiling, lights in common areas, and a couple outlets to be able to charge a laptop or cell phone. And so by doing a partial backup, you can reduce that need for having so many batteries that you need to back up your entire house. And when you get a partial home backup, the way you divide your home into sections that are backed up and sections that are not is based on the breakers in your electrical panel. When you've selected which circuits you'd like to receive battery power during an outage, your contractor will remove those and place them into a newly installed essential loads panel. And this second panel will be wired to the battery. There are also smart electrical panels on the market, which can replace your current electrical panel. And so we'll talk a little bit more about those. So with a smart electrical panel, it allows you to select circuits and kind of prioritize them by must have, nice to have, not essential. Um, and then allows you to have some flexibility with what you decide to keep power running to. There's also monitoring systems, so you can see, um, you know, what is pulling on a lot of energy needs on your battery. Smart electrical panels provide more customization and allow you to charge important circuits based on your priorities. And because of that flexibility, if that priority changes, you have um, some options to do that using that smart electrical panel software. If you're interested in installing a battery, when you install can both affect the system design and the price. Um, if you install your solar and battery at the same time, that can help with the overall design because you don't need to rework your system to add the battery. And then if you decide to add your battery later, which many people do, many people will add a battery to an existing system. There might be need to be some updates that are made to your system to incorporate that battery. Um, and so it's really good to think of your future goals for the system so you can take it into consideration as you plan and put in your solar. Many people will kind of do a phased approach because the upfront cost can be expensive. So they'll add solar first, but if you know that you're going to be adding a battery, you can talk that through with your contractors so that you kind of have a plan and space to put it, and that's thought out. Battery storage does require a significant amount of space. Most systems aren't as big as what is in this photo here, but due to National Electric Code, you can't put batteries in a crawl space or cupboard. Some people do install their batteries outside or in their garage, but it is important to know that it has to meet those National Electric Code requirements. We'll take a look at some current incentives, as well as look at some example budgets. So the first credit that we want to talk about is the Solar Investment Tax Credit, or ITC. And so this is a dollar for dollar tax credit. That means you can reduce the taxes you owe by 30% of the cost of your solar and or battery storage installation. So it does cover both. This is an incentive you don't receive immediately. You must apply for it when you file for your taxes. And note that if you don't owe enough taxes in 1 year, so in that first year install, you can claim this credit over the course of several years. With current policy changes, we are monitoring this situation so that we can stay up to date and let you know when we hear if anything is changing with this. But as of right now, many people are taking advantage of the solar investment tax credit because it does help with that large the large cost of solar. But we will be monitoring the situation. Also, there are a lot of organizations in our state that are working this legislative session um, to help with energy affordability. And so if that's something you're interested in, there are a lot of calls for testimony for people who have solar or who are looking into solar, who care about renewable energy. So there's a lot of opportunities to testify. So um, being active in our local governments can really help. So we are not a tax professional. We just disclaimer that, but we just want to share this information with you so that you are aware of it. And so um, it's helpful when you're doing your taxes, if you do have a tax professional, to ask them how to claim it, to make sure it's claimed correctly. Um, and there are some additional forms you would file to get this investment tax credit. And this would reduce the dollars you owe when you do your taxes during tax season. So it can be claimed, like we said, over several years. Um, and it does apply for solar and storage. There are a lot of myths online about this investment tax credit and what it can cover. One of those myths is that it covers roofing and re-roofing costs, and that is false. So just to make sure that you don't misfile or think that it will cover that, it's really great to connect with your tax professional and just make sure that you're claiming it correctly and aren't depending on it to pay for your roof. There are some local nonprofits in Oregon who are looking to help make home upgrades more affordable. So there are some programs in the works to help with home repairs for a lot of low income homeowners in our state. So that is something to also keep an eye out for if you are going to be needing repairs. Energy Trust of Oregon has incentives for solar and storage. They have a standard incentive that's a flat $950 for customers who are customers of PGE. And so that would actually impact your out-of-pocket costs. So whereas the investment tax credit would be 30% dollar for dollar tax credit and would lessen the taxes you owe, this incentive would be upfront and help you with the out-of-pocket costs. You do have to work with an Energy Trust Solar trade ally to qualify for these credits, and you would need to be a Pacific Power or PGE customer. If you are a Pacific Power customer, you can get $1,100 for solar um, uh, incentive. And if you are looking to add storage, there is a $475 per kilowatt hour incentive for energy storage. And then there is also an Energy Trust Income Qualified program that offers incentives for solar and storage. And it's called Solar Within Reach. And so for Solar Within Reach, you can get a dollar per watt incentive for solar. And if you're a PGE customer, that would be $1.10 per watt, up to $6,600. And for Pacific Power for solar would be 90 cents per watt, up to $5,400. And there's also an income qualified incentive for storage. And so that varies as well if you're PGE or Pacific Power. So you can see for PGE, it would be 900 per kilowatt hour, up to 11,700. And for Pacific Power, it would be $750 per kilowatt hour, up to 9,000. And the income threshold did just increase. So for example, if you're a household of four, um, you can see that income threshold there. The full table for income thresholds is at the Energy Trust of Oregon website. So you can feel free to check that out. I'll also put the links in the chat again. There's a link for Solar Within Reach. Um, and even if you think you might qualify, that would be good to just see if you are able to, since those income thresholds did go up recently. And when you work with an Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor, they can help get you these incentives and help you apply for those as you're working through getting your solar and storage. So we talked about how solar is highly customizable and it can really vary depending on your needs for your home. And we talked about some of the things that can impact the cost, but we're just going to recap those. So solar costs can vary depending on how big your system is, if you need to re-roof or add any structural upgrades or do any engineering analyses. And then also your access to incentives. So depending on what incentives you can access, that's going to impact your cost, as well as interconnection. There's different costs for interconnection here in our state. For storage, um, same thing with size, depending on how much batteries you add to your system, if you're doing a partial home backup or whole home backup, if you do an essential loads panel or decide to add newer technology and do the span panel, which is a little bit more expensive, um, as well as if your system is really spread out and you need to have more conduit runs, can impact the costs. Your access to incentives as well, since there are now storage incentives, can also impact the cost of storage. We'll look at a couple example budgets. And so this is an example budget if you are just adding solar. Um, this is just an example and could vary depending on your specific site, whether that's your home or business, and what the needs are of that site, how complex the installation is. But this is just to get some example numbers on paper for you. So if you're getting an 8 kilowatt solar system, the cost before incentives could be around 32,000. And usually an 8 kilowatt system, depending on how much capacity the batteries are, the panels have, that's going to impact the number of panels you have as well for an 8 kilowatt system. So um, that's also something to keep in mind. The Energy Trust incentive, which we talked about, the standard one, as well as the income qualified incentive, you can see that that can help reduce your out-of-pocket costs by about $1,000 all the way up to $6,600, depending on the customer. So the first few columns show if you're Pacific Power, PGE, and then if you're able to access income qualified incentives, you can see that that can help increase your incentive amount. And then right now, there is still the solar investment tax credit, which is the 30% dollar for dollar tax credit. So that won't impact your out of pocket, but will help reduce the taxes you owe. And so you can see that that can help bring it down. Um, Depending on your customer type. And you can also, like we said, claim the tax credit right now for storage as well. So here in this example, we have a budget if you're getting solar plus storage, still assuming an 8 kilowatt solar system, but adding one battery that is 13.5 kilowatt hours of storage. And your cost before would be about 52,000. And then if you are able to receive the Energy Trust incentives by working with a Energy Trust Trade Ally, you could reduce your out-of-pocket by $6,000 all the way to $18,000. And then showing that out-of-pocket that out-of-pocket difference, if you can get those incentives. Um, and if you do have any questions, feel free just to put them in the chat. We'll do a nice extended Q&A here. But um, because solar and storage do qualify for the solar investment tax credit, you can see that lesses the taxes you would owe by these amounts. And then there's also another option that you have solar already, but then you look to add storage. And so something to note here is that your initial costs might be more expensive. So this is estimating 55,000 if you have to, let's say, change your inverter to incorporate the battery or rework where things are located in your system to incorporate the battery. That can impact the cost. So really planning that out ahead is very helpful. Many people do finance their system, so that's common. There are loans that are tailored to solar, and some homeowners will obtain a loan through a bank that they have an existing relationship with, but some banks don't provide loans that are just for solar. So your contractor may partner with a third party credit union or broker that offers these packages. It's really important when you're looking at your solar quote as well as your financing options that you are looking at all the small print and the additional fees. Also making sure that there's no penalties for paying early. Um, and then as you make these decisions, it's really good to take your time. If you do have a financial professional you can ask advice from, that's also beneficial. But you really want to look at any of the fees that are part of it. And if you want to learn more about reviewing these solar quotes, join us at tomorrow's workshop. And then we mentioned the Energy Trust Trade Allies. So besides offering the incentives for solar, Energy Trust also has a certification program for contractors to help ensure a high quality of workmanship. They have a trade ally contractor for solar that have been rigorously they've been rigorously vetted, and they're often more local companies, and they're approved to offer the Energy Trust incentives. So it's really helpful to work with them. And then you can use the solar bid tool to be connected to a Energy Trust Trade Ally contractor. And it's a quick form that'll ask you what you're looking to add to your home, ask you a little bit about your location, and they'll connect you with qualified trade ally contractors. And we always recommend getting at least 3 quotes if you can. If you are part of the more rural parts of the state or on the coast, sometimes there are less contractors out there, but if you're able to get at least a few to compare, that's really helpful. So you can see where you're getting the best deal. Installation is usually pretty fast. For solar, your contractor will help complete the paperwork, except for the tax credits. That's something you would work through during tax season with your tax professional. Permitting can take a while depending on your jurisdiction. Installation is usually pretty fast, unless you have a complex system where you're installing a lot of batteries. That could take closer to the 4 days. And your contractor will manage inspections and interconnections. Once you apply for interconnection, it can take a few weeks to get interconnected. But once you are, you'll be producing clean energy right there at your home or business. And we'll jump right into Q&A because I saw some hands being raised. So I want to make sure we get to those questions. And then I'll also put the links in the chat again for everyone that have the links to the solar bid tool, to community solar. And those are really helpful to see what your options are, as well as to get connected with reputable contractors. So those links are back in the chat. And then while I look through the Q&A here, I'll also just run our last poll, which will ask you how this workshop went today. That really helps us to improve them. So we appreciate you taking the time to give us that feedback. And then if you're not a part of our newsletter, we definitely recommend signing up to be a part of our newsletter. We'll be sending out updates as we hear different policy changes through the year, as well as updates for local events um, that are focused on the environment and sustainability, as well as solar and storage. Um, yeah, so feel free to sign up for that. I don't think I see any questions in the Q&A box, so I'll stay on for a couple extra minutes here. Um, and like I said, we'll be recording this, so this will be sent out via email to you all, as well as posted on YouTube. And yeah, we'll have a Comparing Solar Quotes workshop tomorrow, so hope to see you there if you have some additional questions. You can also um, send us questions at info@solaroregon.org. So